Hey there. You're always hearing that the economy is either booming or, well, not. But what does that really mean for us? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the economic cycle, that natural rhythm of ups and downs that pretty much shapes our entire financial world.
The best way to think about it is like a roller coaster. Seriously, you've got those big, exciting climbs, we call those expansions, and then you've got those stomach and your throat drops, which are recessions. This whole wave pattern you see here, it affects everything, from the biggest companies right down to our own wallets.
So that brings up the million-dollar question, right? What's actually powering this roller coaster? What makes the economy surge ahead one minute and then slam on the brakes the next? Let's get into it.
To really get what's going on, we have to look at the individual parts first. So let's pop the hood and check out the basic anatomy of an economic cycle.
You know, the whole thing can really be boiled down to a pretty simple repeating loop. It's just three distinct phases that happen over and over again. It's this constant process of growth, followed by a decline, and then a change in direction.
Okay, so let's break down these three steps. First, you've got the expansion. That's the good part, the upward climb, when jobs are plentiful and businesses are growing. Then comes the recession, the downhill slide, when things slow down. And connecting them both are the turning points. You've got the peak at the very top, right before the fall, and the trough at the bottom, just before things start to pick up again. Now here's the really tricky part. These cycles are guaranteed to happen. They're recurrent, but, and this is a big but, they are not periodic. That means they don't happen on a predictable schedule. We know another one is coming. We just don't know exactly when. And that's what makes forecasting the economy so incredibly hard. So, if we can't predict them perfectly, how on earth do we know where we are in the cycle? Well, it's kind of like looking at the dashboard in your car. Economists use a whole set of indicators to read the signs and figure out what's going on. Let's see how that works.
The very first thing we have to figure out is direction. And we're asking a really simple question here. Does a particular economic signal, say manufacturing output or unemployment, move with the economy, or does it move in the exact opposite direction? And this visual shows the three ways it can go. A pro-cyclical variable is in sync with the economy. When the economy is up, it's up. A counter-cyclical one is like a seesaw. It goes down when the economy goes up. And then you have acyclical variables, which just kind of do their own thing with no obvious connection to the cycle.
Okay, the second thing we track is timing. This is all about when something changes. Does it give us a little warning before the economy takes a turn? Does it change at the exact same time? Or does it kind of lag behind, only changing after the fact?
This leads us to three really important labels. Leading indicators are like the fortune tellers of the economy. They change before the cycle turns, which makes them super important for trying to predict what's next. Coincident indicators tell us what's happening right now. And lagging indicators? They're the historians, confirming a change has already happened.
So let's make this real. Industrial production, for example, is pro-cyclical and coincident. It grows when the economy grows. Now, unemployment is counter-cyclical. It goes up when the economy goes down, which is what affects people's job security. But check out stock prices. They're pro-cyclical, but they're a leading indicator. The stock market often signals where the economy and maybe your retirement fund is headed. And inflation? It's pro-cyclical, but it's a lagging indicator, often heating up after the economy has already been growing for a while. Okay, so we know the different phases of the cycle, and we know how to track them. But what's the actual engine driving this whole thing? To get that, we need to look at a core model in economics.
First up, we have aggregate demand. All this curve shows is the total demand for everything in an economy, all the goods, all the services, and see how it slopes down? That just makes sense, right? When prices for everything are lower, people and businesses are willing to buy more. When prices are higher, they buy less. Simple as that.
Now, the other half of the engine is aggregate supply. And the really critical thing to understand here is that it behaves differently depending on the time frame. In the short run, a lot of prices are sticky. They don't change very quickly. But in the long run, prices are flexible and can adjust to whatever is happening. That difference is everything. Okay, so look at this graph. This shows how it all comes together. Let's say people suddenly get nervous about the future. They stop spending as much. That shifts the whole aggregate demand curve to the left, from 81 to 82. Because prices are sticky in the short run, the economy moves from point E down to point H. Output drops, and just like that, you're in a recession.
So, if a sudden drop in demand can throw us into a recession, is there anything we can actually do about it? Can we get in the driver's seat and smooth out that roller coaster ride? Well, the answer is yes. Governments basically have two major tools they can use.
And those tools are fiscal policy and monetary policy. Fiscal policy is all about the government's budget, how much it spends, and how much it taxes. Monetary policy is handled by the central bank, which is in charge of interest rates and the money supply. They're two different levers, but they're both designed to steer the economy.
Let's see one of those tools in action. Say the economy is weak, like in our last example. The government can use an expansionary fiscal policy. It could, for instance, increase its own spending. That directly pumps up total demand, shifting that aggregate demand curve back to the right and giving the economy a much-needed boost.
So this gives policymakers a pretty clear playbook. If you want to fight a recession, you go with expansionary policies. You lower taxes, you spend more money, or you cut interest rates to get people spending again. But if you want to fight high inflation, you do the complete opposite. You use contractionary policies, raise taxes, cut spending, or hike up interest rates to cool the economy down.
But why go through all this trouble to begin with? This quote really gets to the heart of it. A smoother, more predictable economic ride makes for a more stable economy. And a stable economy is way more attractive for investment, which is what really drives long-term growth and prosperity for everybody. And that brings us to the final, massive challenge. We have these powerful tools to smooth out the bumps, but they aren't magic wands. So the fundamental question is always about balance. How do you manage the short-term ups and downs without accidentally creating bigger problems for the long run? That, right there, is the constant tightrope that policymakers have to walk.